It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of Thanksgiving weekend 1998, November 27th, 1998, even though most of the movies that we're looking at here open on Wednesday, and we have four notable movies, some good, some not so good, some I think are some underrated gems. Starting off with the first movie that we have here, the biggest new release of the weekend, which really was not a big hit compared to the first film, and that is Babe, Pig in the City.
There's around here.
Whoa, this Thanksgiving, Babe is leaving the farm
You can't leave. He can't leave.
to help his friends.
Whatever the pig says, goes.
Beg your pardon?
On November 25th, the pig is taking charge. The adventure's taking off. And the whole city's going to town.
Ferdinand the dog. Witness to insanity.
Babe, Pig in the City. Rated PG. Starts Wednesday, November 25th at theaters everywhere.
So what happens in this movie is that it follows after the events of the first film. After Babe's success in the sheep herding contest, the farmer Arthur Hoggett, once again played by James Cromwell, turns down all offers to make money with the pig's talents. But when he gets hurt severely in the well, his wife has to take up farming, and his wife is once again played by Miriam Margolyes. And the farmer basically kind of disappears after the first 10-15 minutes, which is a little bit disappointing, but at least the film that follows actually is really good. Let me continue with the story. She does her best but cannot meet the bank's requirements, which results in the necessity of getting back to Babe. Soon, Esme Hoggett is on a plane sailing for the city, and there Babe unwillingly causes deep trouble. He has to stay with Mrs. Hoggett in the hotel, only that accepts the pets, friendly neighbors and officials who catch all animals from the hotel, cats, dogs, chimpanzees, many others. Babe decides to help his new friends and get unexpected help from Ferdinand, who flew all the way to the city. And this is a film that has a very interesting history behind it. It's, I think the first big mistake was opening this on Thanksgiving weekend, in a spot where you have a Rugrats movie, which would become the first non-Disney animated film to make $100 million. Opening the same weekend was the wider release of Disney Pixar's A Bug's Life. You have so many other family films coming out around this time period. This movie was really going to not make a lot of money compared to the first film. And despite that, I mean, the film wasn't a big hit. It was a big bomb. It had a $90 million budget. It made only $70 million of it back. But despite that, the film did very well with critics. In fact, Gene Siskel, I think, actually named it one of his best movies of 1998, if not the best film of 1998. And when you watch the movie is really, really damn good. Like, I would honestly say it's one of the best sequels of all time. I mean, this one is directed by George Miller, who only wrote the first film. But of course, George Miller, I don't think I need to tell you all of his works that he's done. I mean, the Mad Max movies, Twilight Zone the movie, The Witches of Eastwick, Lorenzo's Oil, 40,000 Years of Dreaming, 3,000 Years of Longing, the Mad Max Fury Road, the Happy Feet movies. I mean, this guy does not make a lot of bad movies, and when he puts his name behind this, when he puts his directorial efforts behind this film, he elevates this to a whole nother level. I'm amazed at how much this movie has held up so well in the year since its release. Like, when I saw it for the first time, I thought it was alright. I thought it was a decent kids film, but as time has gone on, I've really grown to appreciate how mature this movie is, how well done the story is. This is a really damn good movie. It's a film that really had a lot of high expectations coming off of the first film. For some people, it didn't deliver on those promises at first, but I think once they realized that, and actually the movie actually once the movie actually came out and people actually really got a chance to take a look at it, it really is something very special. It really is a very good film. Visually, it's gorgeous to look at. Story-wise, it has so many elements to it. Like, it's not just one linear story, unlike the first film. It takes you through, like, these different places all throughout the film. The enchantment factor is there, the originality is there, the humor is there, it's very fun. It reminds me a lot of the Paddington movies, honestly. Like, the Paddington films are very much kind of like the Bane movies, in a way that they are very... They know exactly... They're made specifically for kids and families, but anybody who has a good heart can actually look at these movies and find a lot to really admire about the Paddington films. I can say the same thing about the Bane movies, and this movie really was something that really took me by surprise when I first saw it. Like, or I mean, in the time that I've seen it, because like I said, the first time I saw it, I thought it was just okay, but as time has gone on, I've really grown to appreciate it more and more, and I think it's a very good sequel. It's probably one of the most underrated sequels you'll probably ever see. It's a film that really, even if you hadn't seen the original Babe, you can pretty much catch up to everything that's going on right away and find a lot to really admire about the film. It's a really enjoyable film. I would highly recommend checking it out if you haven't seen it already. It's definitely worth a watch. Babe Pig in the City, I highly recommend it. So with that said, on to the next movie, and that is Drew Barrymore and Luke Wilson in Home Fries.
Serving up burgers.
How do you make a Whopper? Man, that's Burger King.
Ladies,
Do you mind if I ask you about the father of friends?
Dorian,
Yes, ma'am.
have you ever heard of Lamaze?
This is a strange situation.
lovers.
Sally, I love you.
Okay.
Drew Barrymore, Luke Wilson, Home Fries.
You all come back now.
Rated PG-13. Starts Wednesday, November 25th.
From the same man that gave us Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. No joke, Vince Gilligan wrote the script for this. We'll delve into that in just a second, but you have this hamburger waitress played by Drew Barrymore who's pregnant. Meanwhile, Beatrice, the wife of the father, finds out about his infidelity, and she sends her sons from a previous marriage, military pilots Angus and Dorian Montier, to scare the living daylights out of them. Their gunship does such a good job without hitting him that he dies from a heart attack, and worry about radio interference that night. They investigate who might have had heard too much within the fairly empty reception perimeter, and soon discover only Sally could, still ignorant about her affair with her stepdad. Dorian takes a job there to be sure, and soon falls for her himself, while Mother, obsessed more on Angus, would do anything for her honor. And Dorian is played by Luke Wilson. Angus is played by Jake Busey. The mother is played by Catherine O'Hara. Shelley Duvall is also in here, so is Daryl Mitchell. So there's a great cast involved in here. But Vince Gilligan wrote this for a film class at New York University, and I guess Warner Brothers looked at it and said, hey, this is pretty good. Let's make a movie out of it. Maybe it was just Barry Levinson, the producer, but I digress. This was also directed by Dean Parasot, who would later go on to find much better success with Galaxy Quest, Fun with Dick and Jane, Bill and Ted Face the Music. So he has directed some decent films. I think the biggest thing overall with this film is that I remember it, but I don't remember it too fondly. And Drew Barrymore does not usually make a ton of bad movies. She makes some bad choices with her talk show, but you can listen to that over on the Reviewing Network Live, guys. I'd give you a cheap plug there, but I digress. Like, Drew Barrymore very rarely makes bad movies, and even when she does, she is giving it her all in these movies, and she's perfectly fine in here. She's got some good chemistry with Luke Wilson, but it is essentially a chick flick, honestly. Like, even when Vince Gilligan involved in here, this is still when he was still kind of in the pre-X-Files, is just before he was going to hit it with the X-Files in a couple of years, and eventually he would become the man that we know him as today. But yeah, the film itself really does not have too much memorability to it, honestly. It's a film that I remember watching it. I was just kind of like, I'm not really getting a whole lot here with it. It's just kind of a forgettable film. It's a movie that I kind of wish had a little bit more, considering the talent that they had on board here, but it's not surprising that this film ended up being what it is, just based on the trailers alone. So, that's Home Fries. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Ringmaster with Jerry Springer, because clearly he deserves to have his own movie, right?
Thanksgiving. Join the sweetest group of people you'll ever want to meet.
Save it for the show, okay?
I didn't tell you to wear my jacket. Now I didn't say you could sleep with my husband. Hey, Linda Blair, sing your hair out one more time. Now I'm gonna give you a kiss.
Jerry Springer in Ringmaster.
Certain date and time.
Rated R. Starts November 25th.
Yeah, this is clearly a studio looking at the success of Howard Stern's Private Parts and saying, we could do that with Jerry Springer. He basically stars as himself, the host of a raunchy, controversial, and popular Los Angeles talk show called Jerry, because heaven forbid if we actually called it the Jerry Springer Show, like it is in real life, because this has to be so different from that show. But it features everyday people with problems and frequently vent their problems on the air, and a new group of guests are flown into one show, including white trailer trash from Sarasota, Florida, one of them played by Jamie Presley, pre-My Name is Earl success. Connie, whose current husband has cheated on her with her nymphomatic teenage daughter. Angel, for which Connie has gotten revenge by having sex with Angel's fiance. And from Detroit, black trash Starletta, whose boyfriend Damone had slept with all of his girlfriends. Soon the paths of all these parties cross, which leads to more sex, arguments, physical violence, and Jerry sweating it out just another day. Now, here's the biggest problem with this film. It's trying way too hard to be like Private Parts. Private Parts did a good job of making Howard Stern a likable character based off of his autobiography. But this This is clearly a studio that saw that success and said, we need to make a movie like that. And you have 3 different plots going on in here, and none of them really have nothing to work with here. There's nothing about any of these that are funny whatsoever. Jerry Springer is just playing Jerry Springer. There's really nothing about him that makes him unique. You don't like any one of these characters on the show, even though the intent is not to like them, but you want to at least relate to some of these people on here. But this film just has absolutely nothing to work with. And this director, Neil Abramson, this is I believe only his second film as a director, and he's not made anything. He's mostly known as a music video director. He's directed a lot of music videos, including stuff from Fleetwood Mac, Janet Jackson, Dwight Yoakam, Seal, UB40, Deborah Harry, Lyle Lovett, and we just saw a movie a couple weeks ago from Hype Williams, who's a really good music video director. And I've never seen that film, but I was really curious to see what he would do with a film like that. This is a director that clearly is just taking a film and just making it because the studio clearly wants their own version of Private Parts, except that Private Parts was actually smart and very funny. This movie is not. It is just basically, here's what's going on behind the scenes of the Jerry Springer Show. And that's it. Like, there's nothing about these characters that you like about them whatsoever. Like, why isn't Jerry Springer just playing Jerry Springer? He's got to play Jerry Fairley. Like, really? You just, like, if you're going to do this, make it about the actual Jerry Springer Show, because that's what people are going to see this movie for. Nobody's going to see this movie to know about these stories, about these other characters who are not supposed to like whatsoever. Like, what's the point of even going into this film? And more importantly, why would you release this movie on Thanksgiving weekend? Like, what brain cells tell you that this film deserves to be seen on Thanksgiving weekend? This is the type of film that should open in the dumping ground months of January or September, and maybe do a little bit better. But on top of that, you don't spend $20 million on a movie like this. It only brought back $9 million, that $20 million budget. So that should pretty much tell you everything you need to know about this movie. This is a terrible, terrible movie. I've been wanting to see it for a number of years. I finally got a DVD of it a long time ago, and I've regretted watching it ever since. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It's one of the most unfunniest, uninventive, uninspired comedies you will ever see. It's a watered-down version of Private Parts. It's not funny, and it just doesn't work. It's not funny. It's not creative. It just doesn't have anything there to make it worth your while. It's a waste of time. Just watch Private Parts. Private Parts is a much smarter, much funnier, much more clever movie. This is just garbage. This is just a garbage film. Plain and simple. So, that is Ringmaster. So let's go ahead and move on to the last movie here. Another movie that really shouldn't have been released on Thanksgiving weekend, but thankfully is a lot better than Ringmaster. It's Very Bad Things.
Cameron Diaz is hilarious. Very Bad Things. Rated R. Starts Wednesday at theaters everywhere.
Sort of a precursor to The Hangover, except much darker. And for most people, it's not as funny. But I don't know. I think it's just as good as the original Hangover. I mean, it's certainly a lot better than the Hangover sequels. You basically have a story where you have a group of friends going to Las Vegas for a bachelor party. Things go wrong. A woman gets killed. Soon the bodies are piling up, and the friends find themselves turning against one another as the cover-up builds. And not only do you have Christian Slater among the cast, but you have Jon Favreau, Daniel Stern, Jeremy Piven, Leland Orser, Cameron Diaz, Gene Triplehorn. Kobe Tai is the woman that gets killed. Directed by Peter Berg. This was actually his first film he ever directed. And I really love this movie, man. I love how dark it gets. I love how over the top it gets. I just love how just insane the movie gets. And it does get pretty insane. There are moments in this movie where people are getting killed off in the sickest, most bizarre ways possible. There's a great scene where Daniel Stern's character is getting taken out by a car, and he's like, he's going to drive into my minivan, and he just gets killed, and his body just gets destroyed. And it's just like for most people that'd be too much, but for me, I like that kind of stuff. I like that kind of dark humor. I think it's very, very funny, and I think it's a very funny film. I think it's a very poorly, badly written, tasteless film, but you know what? I loved every single moment of it. I loved how dark it got. I loved how silly it got. I loved how mean-spirited it was. I had a good time with it. I thought it was a ton of fun. Should not have been released on Thanksgiving weekend. This is one of those films, kind of like Ringmaster. It's just kind of like, if you'd released this in January or in March or maybe even September, this film probably would have done a whole lot better and probably would have been received a lot better maybe, but I really enjoyed this film. I know a lot of people really don't, but honestly, I thought it was a ton of fun. I love this movie. Very Bad Things. Very funny black comedy. Definitely check it out. So with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and we're already heading into the last month of 1998, December, with 4 movies, the biggest of the new releases being Gus Van Sant's controversial remake of Psycho, with Vince Vaughn and Anne Heche and Viggo Mortensen. We also have Little Voice, Shattered Image, and Highlight. So 4 films to look at next time. We'll delve into those on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So with that said, I am off. I will see you next time, and until then, as always, take care.